Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Allen with the Cinema Asylum podcast. I am joined by my fellow hosts for this interview, John Thompson, Matthew Walker, and we are interviewing Eddie Deezen. Eddie, how are you doing today?
Great. How are you, Paul?
I am doing excellent. We are very excited to talk to you and
Very excited.
get to know a little bit more about your work and other general things as well. Like I'll just jump right into it with my first question.
Sure.
So I heard that you are a massive Beatles fan.
Yes, the world's biggest Beatles fan. Ask me any Beatles trivia. Go ahead, I dare you. No, I love the Beatles. I've loved them since I was a kid. I remember seeing them on the Ed Sullivan Show. I remember when they came to America. I clearly remember it Friday. We were talking about them. I remember saying one of them was named George Harrison. It's also clear in my mind. I remember going to see A Hard Day's Night. I remember watching them on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I've loved them ever since. I just love everything about them. I don't like Yoko Ono. That would be the only thing. But everything else about them I love.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned trivia because my question was actually going to be geared towards a trivia thing that you either ran or do you still run the trivia on your website?
No, I don't have that anymore. I think my Uncle Leo had that, but I don't do that anymore. I'm not running that anymore. I don't know if it's still in existence. But yeah, I used to have the world's toughest Beatles quiz. I think I could stump the Beatles on that quiz. I could stump Paul or Ringo. They were some of my really, I know a lot of really weird Beatles trivia, weird esoteric stuff.
Mm-hmm. And is it true, like, nobody ever was able to pass that trivia?
Yeah, nobody ever won the money. It was $100. I could have made it $10,000 or $20,000. Nobody would ever get it.
Man, that's nuts. I'm usually pretty good at trivia, but I don't think I would do very well with Beatles trivia for some reason.
Me neither.
Yeah, well, what's your subjects? What are you into?
My area of specialty would be horror. I also do fairly well with like heavy metal trivia because I grew up more into heavy metal.
Okay.
But no, kind of following along with the music theme before we get into talking about your movies and whatnot. In addition to the Beatles, what other bands could we find you listening to?
Well, the Beatles by far, it's like I can't exaggerate how far they are beyond anybody else, but I love a lot of the Stones, I love a lot of Led Zeppelin. I'm not a band, but I love early Elvis. I love the 70s. I love 60s. I love 70s. I love 80s. The last band I really, really loved and thought had great songs was Aerosmith. That's as far back as I go. But it's like pretty much ended in the 80s. I think rock kind of died in the 80s for me. That's my reality. I love 60s. I love 70s, the British invasion. 70s might even be better than 60s. My friend listened to 70s radio and I listened to it and I go, my God, all these songs are great. There's so much great stuff, Elton John and all this stuff is great music.
Oh, absolutely. And I fully agree. I think that that was the peak of music for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what genre you could give me. 80s is where it was the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then stuff came in, rap came in, and horrible stuff came in that just ruined. Everybody's got their own taste. It's all subjective. But for me, that's true. It's just there was like this renaissance in those years, and it just ended. For instance, movies. We're going to talk movies.
Yeah.
Or now TV, I don't watch that much anymore. I pretty much watch Curb Your Enthusiasm. That's about it. But movies, there's always good movies. Movies were good from Charlie Chaplin to Science, and there's always been good movies. But as far as music, it just kind of ended. In the 80s, it just ended, and there's no more good music. It's an art form that just ended. It's just weird that way. Whereas there's still good movies. Oppenheimer was a great film. Oh, yeah. And there's still good stuff coming out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like
I'm sorry, what's your friend's name?
We have John Thompson here. I think he's the one that you might have heard speaking up a little bit.
Hi, John. I'm sorry we never got introduced. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm pretty excited to talk to you, and I love the Polar Express. I love the film.
Thank you.
And
thank you so much.
You're welcome. And all of you guys were just fantastic, and I can't wait to talk Polar Express questions. Can't wait to talk about it.
Oh, sure. Well, it was always on I'm Jewish, but I'm a Christmas nut. Christmas has always been my favorite day of the year. I've had a crush on this girl who was born on Christmas Day. I just love Christmas, everything about it. I love the carols. We saw Die Hard the other day, and Steve and I were rocking out the Christmas connection. I love Christmas, everything about it. And I always wanted to do a Christmas film. It was on my bucket list. Now, I swear to God, Tom Hanks is my favorite star, and my favorite director is Bob Zemeckis. So this was like winning the lottery for me. Everything fell into place, and it turned into a beautiful film. It turned out to be a great film. Now, I guess, well, we can talk about it whenever we want, but I'll tell you the whole Polar Express story. I'll tell you a lot of stories about it, but please, you do the questions.
Yeah, so I'll ask one question, then I'll let my co-host kind of take over a little bit since I've
Sure.
already asked a couple, but to start the Polar Express conversation, because obviously that, like, for me, that's one of my favorite Christmas movies, so I'm eager to talk about that.
Thank you.
So how did you fall into that role? Like, how did that role fall in your lap?
Okay, we're talking about the Beatles. We were just talking Beatles. The best film I ever did, I don't know if you saw it, but it was a 1978 film called I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Mm-hmm.
It's about us kids going to see the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, 7 kids. This was the first film Steven Spielberg ever produced, and it was the first film ever directed by Bob Zemeckis.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we did this film. It turned out great, but it tanked at the box office. It just didn't do good. The fans didn't go. For some reason, at that time, first of all, there were no star names in the movie. We were all pretty much unknown. And also, at that time, the big Beatles renaissance hadn't happened. The Beatles split in 69, 70, and the film was made in 77, came out in 78. And the big Beatles movement that happened since John, unfortunately, passed away didn't exist then. So there wasn't the big thing. They were sold the Beatles, but it kind of died out. And then when John, the tragedy happened with John, the big thing happened. It's never ended from then. The Beatles, tidal wave has been going since then. But anyway, to answer your question, Bob Zemeckis did that movie. Now, Bob wrote me into the Polar Express. The book, The Polar Express by Chris Van Allsburg, I'm not in. My character, Know-It-All, is not in that book. Bob completely wrote a new character for me called Know-It-All, and he wrote me into the movie. So that's how I got into the movie. I didn't have to audition or anything. I went in. I think I went in and talked to Bob. It was like a formality, and he told me about it, motion capture and all this stuff. And then the first day on the set, I didn't even know. He's showing me, he goes, we're going to do this thing called motion capture, and he showed it to me how we looked. It was kind of a weird cartoon. It was the first motion capture film I ever done.
Yeah.
And I said, that sounds kind of like Tom Hanks. And it was freaking Tom Hanks. So there's like 100 of us lined up on that first day, all of us around there. Tom Hanks comes bouncing in. He comes to me first, so he picks me out. He shakes my hand. Hi, Eddie, I'm Tom. I'm like, no shit, Sherlock. It's fucking Tom Hanks, But he introduced himself to me, and I love the guy from the word go. It was so much fun. The process on Polar Express was the weirdest filming I've ever had. Every day it was me, Tom, Nona Gay, who's the hero girl.
Yeah.
She's Marvin Gaye's daughter, by the way, and Peter Scolari, who was with Tom and bosom buddies. I had done a film with Peter called The Rosebud Beach Hotel years ago, and he was the sweetest guy in the world. I loved him. Like so many people, sadly, he died when I was in the hospital last year. So many people I love. I was in the hospital pretty much for the last 2 years before this year, and Peter passed away. But every day, the four of us we'd put on scuba diving suits. We'd get a scuba cap glued to our head. They would take a marker and mark 150 marks on our face. Then they glue 150 of these electronic dots to our face. I swear to God. It's like these weird, dots, those ice cream things. They were like these little dots they glue to our face. And we all had these dots on our face, and we're in scuba suits. And that's how we performed. Now, we would do the scene. We'd act out the scene. Hey, do you know what kind of train this is? Well, do you? We'd act that scene. Then they had 4 kids. They had a little kid, me, a kid, Tom, a kid, Nona, and a kid, Peter. The kids would act out the same scene. We would act the scene out with our arms and legs, and you could see us acting it out. Then kids would act out the same scene. I swear to God, as weird as it sounds. Then somehow they morphed us into kids' bodies. They kept mine and Nona's voice, but another kid they dubbed in Tom's voice as the kid,
right.
And for some reason they dubbed in Peter's voice. Of the 4 kids, there's Tom the hero boy, then Peter's the lonely boy, Nona's the hero girl, and I'm Know-It-All. Only Nona and I are voiced with the kids. Tom and Peter's not in it. Peter's voice is not in the movie at all. Tom took like 6 different characters. Tom is Santa Claus. Tom is the hobo on the train. Tom is, different characters. I forget what else he is, but he's like 6 different characters. He's Santa Claus. He's like the weird guy with the puppets, I know who you are. He's like that sinister guy. He does like 6 different voices in it. And that's how we did it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's amazing because
it was a weird process. We did it for 11 weeks. It was a bizarre process. Makeup took forever. We were on there, and to glue the dots on us was a very intricate process. It took forever, to do it. But that's how we did it, and they did it with the little kids too. The little kids had dots on their face, and they were in these little scuba outfits too.
Yeah, that was actually going to be one of my questions was about that process because as you pointed out, this was the first, motion capture film. Like this
Right.
had not been really done before. So
yeah. Bob Zemeckis loves doing, Forrest Gump was kind of a new kind of film. He loves doing new, innovative stuff. Castaway, his films, he likes doing these new weird effects. He likes groundbreaking stuff. So that was the first motion capture film. I don't even know how much, because now AI has taken over everything. The motion capture, I don't know if it's even hardly used anymore. Everything, Steve and I went to see Die Hard. We saw it on Friday, one of our favorite Christmas movies, and we saw the previews. And it's like every preview was all AI, Aquaman, everything's AI. It was so dull. I don't, you know what I mean? It's such a horrible age we live in that way. You want to see a great movie, you want to see great movies with these great stars. You want to see them act. And AI it's just this stupid thing, it's this phony, stupid thing. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I fully agree. Like, this is going to be a spoiler for the listeners. My favorite movie of the year is Oppenheimer, and it really didn't use
same here.
AI.
That's how I feel, Paul. Oppenheimer is my favorite movie of the year. I thought it was a great movie. Yeah.
It's an amazing movie, and it's funny too because I was not expecting it to take my number one slot of the year. Like,
yeah. Well, I had been disappointed this year. We'd seen a few this year. We saw 80 for Brady. We saw that Killers of the Flower Moon. Killers of the Flower Moon. I fell asleep more than I've ever fallen asleep in a movie. I fell asleep. I swear to God, I'm not kidding. 8 or 10 times. The first 2 hours, I kept nodding off.
Oh no!
Now, maybe I was tired, but I kept going and I kept falling asleep, and it ended all right. It was an all right film. It was about a 5,
Yeah.
But Oppenheimer, I thought, was really a good film. The guy was great. It was a great study of a man, and the what must have gone through this poor guy's head, he's this genius and he created this thing, and the implications that he's the first man in history that invented this thing that could destroy the human race. What must have been that like, when he went to bed at night? What must this poor tortured guy have gone through,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
but I think he's a shoo-in to win the Oscar. He was great. I think it'll win the Oscar. And I enjoyed it. It was a bit long, but I went to the bathroom like 2 times, I think. But it was a great movie.
I could see Oppenheimer getting several Oscars this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Matthew Walker.
Oh, hi, Matthew.
Hi. I had actually...
So there's 3 of you.
There's 4 of us, actually. Dylan's sitting over there in the corner.
Okay. Who, Dylan?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Dylan.
Hi, Eddie. It's a pleasure hearing you talk about everything. I gotta say.
Thank you. Yeah, please feel free to ask me anything.
So obviously you've done a lot of animated series. You've done Pink Panther and What's New Scooby Doo are the 2 that I'm asking about. What was it like jumping into pre-established franchises with big legacies behind them?
Well, Scooby Doo was there were some of the original guys. Casey Kasem was the nicest guy in the world. He was an original. Frank Welker, I think I think Frank is still around. He's the nicest guy in the world. I love Frank. Mindy Cohn, I loved. I'd done a Facts of Life, and I knew Mindy from years ago. And the other girl was what was her name? I think Gray was her name. She was a lovely girl. I'm sorry?
Gray Delisle, I believe.
Yeah, they were a wonderful cast, and they were directed by a lady named Colette Sunderman, who is my favorite animation director. She's a genius. She's the best. I always call her the Steven Spielberg of animation. She did all, that great era of Cartoon Network in the in the 90s, where they had Dexter's Lab and Johnny Bravo and Powerpuff Girls. She directed all those shows. She's just the best. I love Colette, so that was a pleasure. And the significant Scooby Doo, I'll be honest with you, I didn't watch. I remember it was on when I was a kid. It was a popular show, but I never really watched it. I remember seeing it on TV, but I would flip the channel, so I wasn't really intimidated by something like that. But it was just it was a beautiful experience. It was fun. Cartoon Network was a great place to be. Everybody at Cartoon Network was nice. It was a great time to be in animation. It was a joyous time.
Yeah, there was tons of good animation at that point. The 90s and early 2000s was
Yeah, they were funny. And you look at the shows now, and they're not that funny. You look at them now, they're not that funny anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I definitely preferred the old cartoons back in the 80s, 90s through 2000. There were some great times.
Yeah.
What are the odds we prefer the music and television of the 90s and 80s?
Exactly. We're all reactionaries.
I was born in the 90s, man.
I'm sorry?
I was born in the 90s, man. I love the 90s.
Oh, seriously? Oh, my God, you kid you. It's Ben's birthday.
What's funny is this is actually, whenever we get to the main episode, it is his birthday episode.
Oh, really?
It's
your birthday today?
My birthday is December 20th, so this is kind of an early birthday present, the fact that we get to talk to you. It's really cool.
Well, thank you. I would sing Happy Birthday like Marilyn Monroe for you, but whatever. We'd be taken off the
air. Well, thank you. But yeah, I was going to ask you about Tom Hanks, who I absolutely love. Yeah. He's one of my favorite actors. What was it like working with director Robert Zemeckis and Tom Hanks in The Polar Express? What was it like?
Well, Tom is the greatest guy in the world. I have many Tom Hanks stories. I'll just tell you, when I was talking to Denise, the lady I live with, is a great lady. She cooked us Thanksgiving dinner tonight. Steve, she was out of town visiting her family, so she cooked it. We missed Thanksgiving with her, and she's a great cook, and she cooked us Thanksgiving dinner tonight. And I was telling her this Tom Hanks story. When I was growing up there, do you guys know the show? This goes back because I was born in 1957. I'm 66. I'm an old man compared to you guys. But there was a show called Captain Kangaroo. Do you know that show?
Yes.
I've heard of it.
Okay. Never heard of it.
It was a kiddie show. Anyway, I was on the set one day, and it was the day Captain Kangaroo died. Bob Keeshan actually passed away. He was 90 or whatever, and he died. And I was bummed out in makeup. So I was sitting there real sad, and Tom Hanks comes into the makeup room, and he goes, "Did you hear about Captain Kangaroo?" And Tom and I both grew up loving Captain Kangaroo. It was the first show I ever loved. It was the first show I fell in love with. I would watch it every day before I went to kindergarten. I was like 5 or 6 years old. Anyway, I'm outside, and I'm real bummed out. I go out, Tom and I talk, and I was real depressed because Captain Kangaroo, my first TV hero, died. So I'm outside. It was a real sunny day. So Tom Hanks walks up to me. He didn't say anything. He just started singing this song, the Tom Terrific song. It's a character on Captain Kangaroo. You can Google it or go to YouTube, but it's a character called Tom Terrific. He had this mighty dog, and he was a real idiot, just dumb little kid. Hi, I'm Tom Terrific. Da, da, da. Anyway, Tom comes out to me. He sings the whole Tom Terrific song to me. I'm looking up at him in the sun, and he goes, "I'm Tom Terrific, and this is my dog, Mighty Dog." Da, da, da. He sang the whole song for me, word for word, verse for verse, chorus for chorus. He sang the whole song. I'm looking at him, and it's surreal. I'm thinking, Tom fucking Hanks is singing me the Tom Terrific song. He gives me a serenade. I'm looking into the sun. And he just stood there. He finished the whole song, and he stood there. And I was speechless. I didn't know what to say. I go, "You know what? You're a great guy. You're a great guy." And he just walked away. And that was typical of Tom Hanks. That's just the story I use because he'd do stuff like this every day. He'd do this magical stuff. He just was like this magical character. I don't know how to describe it, but he was this great guy. I did the whole movie Polar Express. I have a hard time memorizing lines, okay? So when I did Polar Express, I did the whole movie with cue cards. They had the guy that held Bob Hope's cue cards held my cue cards. It was the same guy. So he held my cue cards, and I did the whole movie. So the last day of shooting, Tom comes up to me. He goes, "What the fuck are you, Bob Hope?" He goes, "What are you fucking doing with cue cards?" And he's too mad. He was like an older brother to me. But he waited till the last day to do that. And I think he was kind of weird because for Tom Hanks, it's so easy, to remember. It was so easy and routine for him. But for me, it's hard to remember my lines. And he gave it to me the last day. He chewed me out. I don't know. And that was kind of a weird story. But I think there was he said it kind of tongue in cheek. But I think he was kind of a little like, well, what do you need cue cards for? Why? He couldn't really understand it or fathom it that an actor needed cue cards. Yeah. Every day on the set, I would go in and I realized I could ask Tom Hanks anything I want. And we'd go in and we'd talk about anything under the sun. We'd just talk. One day he comes up and he goes, what do you think was the biggest ripoff in Oscar history? And I don't know. I couldn't think of an answer. He goes, "How about Cary Grant not winning a fucking Oscar?" He goes, "I can't believe fucking Cary Grant never got an Oscar." And he just say stuff like this out of the clear blue sky. He'd come up and say that stuff every day, weird stuff like that. He's just very off the cuff guy. One day, my last line in Polar Express, my last line in the movie. It was my last scene, and we're all saying goodbye. I'm saying goodbye to Tom and Peter and Nona. It all saying goodbye. And Bob Zemeckis comes up to us and goes, "Eddie, what do you want to say for your last line?" And I couldn't think of anything. I go, "God, I don't know, Bob. I can't think of it." And then Tom goes, "How about it's the thought that counts?" And Tom made up that line. He gave me the line. That's how nice of a guy is. He gave me the line. It was a perfect line. They're saying goodbye, and they go, da-da-da. And I go, "Well, it's the thought that counts. Well, see ya." And that was my last line movie. Know-It-All had kind of, all the characters in the movie go through a metamorphosis. And Know-It-All was, at the beginning, he's a total asshole. He's like this jerk kid. Yeah. And then at the end, he kind of turns a little more human. He learned a lot about loving friends, and he grew a little bit. And he goes, "Well, it's a thought that counts." Know-It-All would never said that at the beginning of the movie. But at the end of the movie, after what they'd all been through together, he says that, he loved the guys, and he said it's the thought that counts. At the beginning, "I want all these presents. Give me all these presents." And he kind of groaned, and Tom gave me that line. It was the perfect line. That was Tom Hanks. He had a brilliant mind, and he was a very giving guy to give another actor a line like that. And he gave me that line.
Yeah, that is a great story, and I still can't believe even years later that Tom Hanks is still acting, and he's still got it. He's unbelievable at what he does.
He's the great. He has more of my favorite movies than anybody. So
mine too.
From Forrest Gump to the today's the anniversary of the Green Mile. The Green Mile came out today.
Love that
Michael
one.
Clark Duncan's birthday today, and I love that movie. What was I have like 5 films, Tom, that just blow me away. And not counting Polar Express. Polar Express, I'm so proud to be with him in. And he's just. I think he's the greatest actor ever. I love him so much.
I say exactly the same thing.
My other favorite actor. I'm sorry.
I say exactly the same thing. I first think he's the number one greatest actor ever.
Yeah, he's the modern day Jimmy Stewart. He's kind of like the everyman. There's something intrinsically likable about it. He can never really play a villain like Jimmy Stewart because he's such an intrinsically lovable, likable guy.
Oh yeah.
And you can never really believe Jimmy Stewart could be an evil guy or a criminal. And you can't really believe it about Tom Hanks. He could never really play a bad guy. He's just such a great, nice guy, and it shows through.
Yeah, I can't see Tom Hanks play a bad guy.
Yeah, I just couldn't see it.
I can't see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of keeping with the Polar Express topic, so I read a very interesting theory, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this theory. I'm quoting it from IMDb. It talks about that some of the viewers speculate that the conductor actually time traveled, and they're saying they believe that he is actually the older version of the hero boy.
That's interesting. Never heard that one. That's kind of like the Grease one where they believe Olivia died, that Sandy died, and they're flying off to heaven at the end. I guess that's a fan thing. It's a thing. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I never heard that one. I don't know. You have to ask Chris Van Allsburg what went through his mind. Chris Van Allsburg wrote it. It's his thing. So I don't know. I only met him at the premiere. He was a nice guy.
Yeah, I found that interesting. I always love reading fan theories.
Yeah.
So I was kind of curious about that.
I want to tell you one last theory about the Polar theory. I'm sorry. One last story about the Polar Express premiere. This is a true story. Mm-hmm. The Polar Express premiere was at Mann's Chinese Theater. It was November 10th, 2004. It was 19 years ago. My mom came out. I invited all my friends. We went there, and I was so excited. I'm in this film with Tom Hanks and all. Anyway, we saw it on screen. I'd never actually seen us on screen, how we looked. And the movie started playing. Chris Van Allsburg sitting in front of me, and Bob was there. And they started playing, and I couldn't believe it. I thought we looked terrible. I thought, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. I'm not good at premieres, let me tell you, Paul. I'm not good at premieres. For some reason, I don't do good at premieres. I always freak out. But I didn't like it. So about halfway into the movie, I walked out. I said, I'm going to take a walk. My girlfriend is there. My mom's there. My best friend is there. And they said, where did Eddie go? And she goes, he's taking a walk. It's a premiere of his movie. He's taking a walk. But anyway, I literally walked out of the theater. I got on a bus and took the bus home. This is how crazy it was. I was overwhelmed by how bad it looked. So I'm on the bus. I was literally crying. This is a true story. I was actually crying. This sounds like it's right out of a movie, but this really did happen. This is one of those, it's too crazy to be believed. But I'm on the bus, and this African-American guy comes over to me. He goes, why are you crying, son? He was this older guy, and I go, I was in this movie called The Polar Express, and it's terrible. I had all these hopes for it. And this guy goes, no, The Polar Express. He goes, I heard it's a good movie. I heard it's a great movie. For some reason, this guy's viewpoint turned me around. I stopped crying. I felt better. I got off the bus. I took the bus back, and I went back to the theater. But that guy turned my whole viewpoint around. Anyway, I was a little bummed out. We had the party, and we ate, da-da-da. Anyway, later, about a couple days later, I went with my friend Tommy to Universal Studios, and we were going to see Polar Express. And this is another weird thing. A guy from Playtone Productions, his name is Gary Guessman. He's one of the producers of the Polar Express. He happened to be at Universal City with me and Tommy. And he goes, we were getting their tickets. He goes, what are you doing? He goes, we're going to see the Polar Express. I wanted to see it on the screen again to get another look at it. And he said, I'm going to pay for you. So he paid. Tommy and I got in, and I watched the Polar Express again. I saw it in a new unit of time. I watched the whole film through. And Tommy goes, this is a classic. He goes, this is a great movie. And I saw it, and I really loved the film. But that guy, that African-American guy, he might be dead now. I don't know. But he saved my life that day. I don't know. He turned my whole viewpoint around. I don't know. I would have probably went home and not come to the premiere party. And I don't know. He just changed my viewpoint about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had experiences like that happen to me, in my movies too. I actually just had my first movie premiere back in October.
What happened?
Well, it was a particularly rough couple of months for me. And It just so happened that my movie was coming out at the tail end of that, and I actually almost didn't go to my own premiere.
Interesting.
It honestly took 3 of my closest friends convincing me to go to see my own movie.
Okay.
That's honestly what it took, and like that, it changed my whole perspective on it. Like I was able to actually sit and enjoy it.
Okay.
And the reviews.
So it turned out good.
Oh yeah.
Good.
I was quite.
I'm glad. So that is a happy ending.
Oh yeah. I was quite worried because it was my first movie, and I'm like, the first movie isn't always the best, and so I was kind of expecting it to not be that great. But then I see it in full for the first time in the theater, and I'm like, this is actually really good.
Okay, there you go. That's a great moment.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And between the two premieres, there was probably about 220 people there, 230.
Okay, very good. That's a good crowd.
Oh yeah. So, yeah. Do either of you have any other questions you want to get into?
I don't have anything else.
Yeah, I definitely have one. So you definitely see plenty of great movies, which there's definitely no doubt about that. And I personally think that 2023 has been a fantastic year for movies, and there's been other years of movies that's considered like the greatest years, like of all time in terms of films. In your opinion, what is the movie that you walked out on and said that was the worst movie I've ever seen?
Okay, I can answer that. My record, I've walked out on some movies if they're bad. This is a true story. There's one movie with Meryl Streep. It's called The French Lieutenant's Woman. I walked out after 7 minutes. I could not stand it. This was the worst, most excruciating, tedious, boring, dull film ever. I walked out after 7 minutes and going out. So it was so bad. I go, can I see the manager? I called the manager over. I go, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. I go, I'd like a refund, please. I go, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. And the manager goes, worse than some of yours?
Oh, God Almighty!
Ouch. Now he did give me the refund. This was at the time. This was like I think in the 80s. But at that time, I don't know if it's still a rule. If you walk out in a movie within the first half hour, they will give you a refund. That's how they used to do it. I don't know if they still do it, but that's what they told me. But that was my record, 7 minutes, and that was the worst movie I've ever walked out on.
Wow.
Gosh, I think that tops any burn I've ever been given. Oh my Lord, have mercy!
Burn, right?
I'm going to offer a contrast to John's question. Has there, or rather, what movies have you seen that you walked out of them, after credits and everything, and you're like, I wish that I was in that?
Well, okay. Here's one of my biggest mistakes. I think I saw it on. I'm not sure if I saw it. I actually went to the theater. I probably did. But when I turned on, they wanted me for Spinal Tap. This is Spinal Tap, the Rob Reiner film. And Mr. Reiner was there, and I went to the audition, and it was one of the dumbest decisions I made. They wanted me to ad-lib, which I love. My biggest button is memorizing lines. So they're saying, can you do this role? I was going to play one of the fans of the group, just a groupie. Yeah. And you can just ad-lib. And Michael McKean was there, one of the nicest guys. He's my friend. He's a super nice guy. And Mr. Reiner was very nice, And by the way, Mr. Reiner was at the Polar Express premiere, and I apologize to him again for not being in his movie. But that was the dumbest thing I did. I didn't do I refused to do it. And Rob Reiner actually called my apartment. And I told they wanted me for the film. I had it. I could have done a film with Rob Reiner. And Spinal Tap, it's not a great film, but it's a good, enjoyable film, And I could have been funny in it. And he said, Eddie, I hear you don't want to be in our movie. He was real sad, like he was going to cry. And I go, Mr. Reiner, I don't want to do it. I can't ad-lib, da-da-da. And anyway, it was my dumbest decision. I didn't do the movie. I didn't have faith in myself. It's a lesson about having faith in yourself and chickening out. I should have just done it. I should have bit the bullet and done it. And it would have been fun. I'm sure it could have been fun. It would have been a great experience. That's one of my biggest movie regrets that I didn't do, that I had a shot to do it.
Yeah, I do have one more quick question for this one. There's been many amazing Christmas movies, but what do you think is considered a modern Christmas classic? Like, just came out just like recently. What do you think is the best one so far?
What do you consider recently?
Ooh.
In other words, before you're after Die Hard.
What would you say, John? Like 2000 on out?
Yeah, I say 2009 out. Yeah.
That was a great Christmas movie. Let me think. Scrooge. Let me think. What Christmas movies do I love? Die Hard. I love. I'm not crazy about. Okay, name some, and I'll tell you if I like them. Just throw some names at me, and I'll tell you if I like the movie.
Well, for
some reason they're not coming to my mind. I remember Scrooge with Bill Murray. I don't know if that was after 2000.
Let's see. A Christmas Story Christmas, that came out last year.
Okay, I didn't see that. I was in the hospital pretty much all last year.
I actually love the sequel. It's really good. I love the sequel.
Okay.
Elf.
I was not crazy about Christmas Story. That's the one with the rifle. It was okay. It's not one of my favorite films.
I agree.
Christmas is my favorite day of the year, but I'm not crazy about Christmas movies now that I think about it. Die Hard, I think, would probably be my favorite. I like Polar Express. I like, this goes back. See, I'm a movie nut. I love movies from the silence, but I love the Christmas Story, the one version of, I think, with Alistair Sim. It's a beautiful story. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say Elf is the modern Christmas classic that I absolutely love. That's like my favorite Christmas movie.
Okay, I've seen that. It's all right. I'm not a super big Will Ferrell fan. Steve was telling me how great he was in Step Brothers. And for some reason, he's a very nice guy. It's not the person. He's just not my favorite comedian. I never really got into him.
Okay. Yeah, I respect you for that.
Yeah.
So I have one more question on my end, and I think that
I think that's it. Yeah.
I think the other boys are out of questions now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So kind of going back to memorizing lines, that is actually something I struggle with as well. For two reasons.
People, it's just a piece of cake for them. They do it matter-of-factly. I could do it in my younger days. I go in a room, like an actor, you lock yourself in your room and you just hold a script and you go over your lines over and over, and I could do it. Now, as you get older, it's harder, at least for me. It got much harder when I got older. When I started in my 40s, it became hard. But I Want to Hold Your Hand, 1941, the early films, I could do it. I memorized my lines. I did one called Mob Boss. I actually was the star of the film with Morgan Fairchild. I got to make out with Morgan Fairchild, believe it, and I got paid for that. But I just memorized my lines, and you just do it.
Yeah, so for me it's a challenge because I actually have dyslexia and I also have a very long history of concussions. So for other actors,
history of what? I'm sorry.
Concussions.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, Matthew's hit me over the head one too many times, I think.
Okay, yeah.
That's not true.
That's not true.
Curly Howard had that.
I love the Three Stooges. That one of my favorite.
My supreme hero.
But no, as far as like memorizing lines goes, for other actors out there who may struggle like we do, what advice could you offer them for memorizing lines?
Well, here's the thing about it. It's not necessarily advice on that, but I'll answer your question. But voiceovers is the perfect solution. That's why when I started doing voiceovers, I started out on camera, and then I started doing voiceovers like about the late 80s or 90s. I would start doing cartoons. Go, wait a minute. You have a script there, and you get to just read your lines. Go, this is a piece of cake. I could do this for 20 hours. You just sit and read lines. You mess up a take, you just read your lines again. So get into voiceovers. That's a perfect solution. As far as doing it, just I told my old method in the old days was I would lock myself in my room and read my lines over and over and over and over until it became ingrained in your head, or get a friend to do it with you. To have one of your friends come over and just bat the lines back and forth. Will you take this role? Maybe take them out to lunch. Say, will you read lines with me? And for a half hour, you do the scene. The good thing about movies are easier than TV because movies, as you know, you only do a scene a day, 1 or 2 scenes. A TV series, were always hard for me. Like I did a Magnum PI or a Facts of Life. You have to memorize, a whole half hour's worth or an hour's worth of dialogue, which is much harder. Although Magnum was kind of filmed like a film, so that was, but like a sitcom, like the Facts of Life, which I did, or I did like 9 pilots, and you'd have to, do up the whole half hour's worth, and you have to remember that. So that's hard. So I would say get a friend, get a good friend, and read your scenes over the night before, and that'll ingrain them in your head. But you have to just do it over and over and over, and it becomes second nature to you. You can do it, and it becomes second nature to you.
Absolutely. Well, Eddie, we are so grateful to you for doing this interview with us, and we just want to thank you for coming on. And that was my last question. If you all have any other questions?
All I can say is it was an honor to talk to you, and thank you for telling some great Polar Express stories. And all I can say, if you ever get a chance to act some more, good luck to you for the rest of your career, because you were great in the Polar Express, and so was everybody else. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody there. Okay, go down the names. Paul, please tell me all the names again. Paul?
Yes, there is John, Matthew,
Ringo, and George.
And we also have Dylan.
Okay, hi, Dylan. Okay.
Hi. I'm totally fine being referred to by George, by the way.
Okay.
I guess I'm just still Paul.
Okay.
But
well, I want to be honest. I want to be totally honest with you. You are four of the nicest guys I've ever talked to. You are such incredibly nice guys. I so wish I had longer to talk to you. I have so many great stories. How I got Grease. We could only cover basically this was 90% Polar Express. So since it's Christmas, this I guess is the perfect interview. But if you ever want to talk to me again, it'll be my pleasure. Just talk to Steve. You are such great guys. I want to wish you all happy Hanukkah. Have a Merry Christmas. Have a happy holiday season. I hope all your holiday wishes come true and continued success. I hope you. What is the name of your movie?
It is called The First Harvest.
The First Harvest. Will it be playing? Will it be playing out here? We're in South Carolina.
It is on Vimeo, and I also have DVDs available.
Okay. Well, I'd love to see it. If you ever want to send Steve a copy, I'd love to watch it.
Oh, absolutely.
And I wish you good luck with it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck to all of you.
Yes, God bless. Thank you so much for coming.
Sure, it's been my pleasure. Have a great holiday season. Take care.
You too, sir. Thank you.
You too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
And thank you, Eddie Deezen. We had a great time talking to you. We hope to talk to you again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for listening to a special edition of the Cinema Asylum podcast. We will see you guys later.
Have a great Christmas.
We have been the Cinema Asylum podcast. You guys were awesome. Thanks for coming out. Good night.